Now, do you remember back in the early days of post-referendum confusion when the one lot was still claiming that everything was going to go brilliantly and the other lot were just going, are you sure about this? Because the people what really know their onions, they seem a lot less optimistic about the future than the people who don't know their proverbials from their elbows. And we collected a kind of crack squad of supremely qualified people, by which I simply mean people that actually do the jobs. You will remember Kieran, who rather modestly described himself as a van driver, but was actually an expert on international logistics because he's the one that crosses the borders with the cargoes. And then we would take calls from a variety of people who were absolutely in the midst of it. And one of my favourites, and one of your favourites, was John Shirley, who is, of course, the managing director and indeed the owner of John Shirley Freight Forwarders Limited. And I think it's fair to say that John gave us some concern that we might not be fully prepared or fully ready for Brexit whenever it occurred. I'm delighted to tell you that he's back on the show and no doubt overflowing with optimism and good cheer. John, good to have you back. How are things looking?
Thank you, James. Good afternoon to you. Well, they're looking even worse than when I last spoke to you.
Oh.
You remember at that time there were certain people saying, well, I'd rather eat grass than be in Europe.
Yes.
Well, that opportunity may very soon come their way.
I shouldn't laugh. For people who don't realise, you run a big operation in Dover that essentially is charged with getting kit and caboodle to and from continental Europe.
Yeah, and we deal with countries outside Europe, which is what Britain will be. We deal with places like Belarus, Moldova, Albania, Serbia, and so on. And so we know all about delays exiting the EU, entering the EU. It's about 8 to 10 hours each way. And we also know, because we sit here in Dover opposite customs, that 99% of the people, of the truck owners, the hauliers, carrying our cargo in and out of the country belong to the continent. There's hardly any British trucks. In the 30 years that we've loaded trucks, we've only ever loaded one British one.
Well, that's, intriguing on a whole bunch of levels, but it's concerning in the context of what happens at the end of this month, John. I sense you might have expected more to have been done by now.
Now, this is what I'm coming to, James. Yeah. Now, before I said, well, it's going to be terrible, we're going to be dreadful jams, and like everybody else, we in the forwarding community thought that there's going to be enormous queues and blah, blah, blah. But no, we've been wrong-footed. And this is not just from me, this is from my colleagues in the British International Freight Association. The hauliers have told many of us that next year they won't come to Britain at all.
That counts as a positive almost then in the context of there won't be any queues because there won't be any trucks.
Exactly.
Oh, no.
So what's going to happen to the British economy?
I don't know, John. I don't know. I mean, why is that then? Why would hauliers be? Well,
I'll explain.
Yeah.
So let's imagine you have a fleet of say 6,000 trucks or 5,000. Yeah. 500 of them are tied up in Britain. Well, that's an immediate expense to you. Secondly, by the way, Eddie Stobbart, I think, has around 2,000. So we're talking about Lithuanian hauliers who have a lot of trucks.
Yes.
So you have drivers whom you pay by the kilometre. It's about 60% of hauliers work like that. So if they are stuck in one of these garages, then they
It's good to know you're still listening, John. Good to know you're still listening. Go on.
You know what they're likely to do? They're going to say, right, boss, I'm off. They'll hand in their notices.
Because they're not going to make any money if they're being paid per kilometre.
How they're going to feed their families, pay their bills and so on. So, they're going to quit. And, of course, nobody wants to drive a truck, as I said previously when I came on. Nobody wants to drive a truck. They want to sit in front of a computer, and they will do that, and they will go and work for another haulier that only does work within the EU. So, I don't know, Stockholm to Madrid or Bucharest to Bonn or something like that. So they know that they will have an income. Likewise, the haulier will also want to keep his trucks running because he's got his leasing costs, or they've got their leasing costs to pay, their fuel costs, and obviously the drivers. So
yes.
They need to keep those trucks running.
And this is all crystal clear to you from the perspective of running an international freight
yes.
forwarding company in Dover.
Yes, I can see the reasoning that the line they're taking.
Well,
I can
man.
also see that there's two other considerations. One is permits. We will become a third country, and to come here, if you are, say, a Lithuanian, and yes. I'll tell you that the current international freight is dominated by Lithuanians, Romanians, Poles, and Hungarians.
Okay.
You can come here and see them pass the door all the time.
That's interesting.
So they will then need to go to their ministries of transport to get permission to load from Germany, if they're, because they're not German, obviously, to Britain. Well, I can't see them lifting a finger to do so.
Because there'll be enough work without coming here.
Within the EU, yes. Yeah. Shortage of drivers. So. And then the other problem is port health.
Yeah. Port
health only work 9 to 5, don't work weekends. And we reckon, I was watching a driver the other day, about 5,000 of the trucks each day coming through here are bringing in food. 80% of our food comes on those trucks. So you understand that, at the moment it's a 24/7, you just go straight through. So
it's just not going to happen. So we forget that it's two-way traffic as well. So
yes, exactly.
on January the 1st, I want you to imagine a truck full of tomatoes coming from, or something a bit more staple, a truck full of food making its way from Calais to you, and then you've got a truck full of something else making its way from Dover to Calais. What's going to happen? What will be the most obvious and easily understood differences between what would happen if you were doing those two trips today and what's going to be happening if you were doing them a month from today?
Yeah, right now they just go sailing straight through.
Yeah.
No hesitation.
Frictionless is the word we've all learned.
Yes, that's exactly it. But no, I mean, I hope, just to make this clear, Northern Ireland is going to be outside the United Kingdom in the customs point of view, as you're probably already aware. So somebody, this is maybe a better example.
Yeah.
Somebody moving home from Belfast to Glasgow will have to do a customs entry, export from, Belfast. And import entry the other side. We will ask you for 75 quid for the export entry and 75 quid for the import entry. That adds £150 to your costs. And as to delays,
because everything has to be checked.
Yeah, exactly.
We're going to talk again, John, probably before the axe falls. But can I just run Can I run something by you? Yeah, and it's not Dover, it's Folkestone, actually, where I did read that they were currently fronting up £1 million a day of public money to deal with delays. But a pal of mine who's in business and had a shipment coming in from China, so not EU trade, but just in the context of ports, he told me that his shipment, the ship was parked outside Folkestone for 2 days. It couldn't get in. And therefore they gave up.
It would be Felixstowe.
Felixstowe. So thank God you're here, John. Thank God you're here. Felixstowe came in from China to Felixstowe. Couldn't get into Felixstowe because it's chocker. Parked up for 2 days, and then they decided that they were just going to knock the British drop off on the head. And my mate's gear is now in Amsterdam.
Exactly. Yes, they've been doing that. Yes.
I accused him of lying, John.
No.
I said he was one of those pesky Ramonas who didn't know what he was talking about, and it was all Project Fear.
But we should bear in mind that is a container. It doesn't have a driver with it.
Oh, mate. Well, we will talk again because we need the benefit. At least forewarned is forearmed, and I haven't even had time to express concern for your commercial future, although we will do that next time, I promise. John Shirley, who obviously doesn't know as much about international freight forwarding as John Redwood does, but is currently the managing director and owner of John Shirley International Freight Forwarding in Dover.